All right, number one. The line graph shows the percent of cars for sale at the used car lot given day by model per year. So this is the percent of cars for sale, and this would be the model. For what model year is the percent of cars for sale the smallest? All right, well, let's look. Well, you can immediately tell that this will be the smallest value. So looking down, it'll be 2014 model, and you can tell it's the smallest value because these are the percent car sales, and this is 4%, the lowest value. So we know it's going to be answer choice C. All right, number two. This is going to be a word problem, so we're going to write out the information as we read it. So for a particular machine that produces beads, 29 out of every 100 beads, so 29 out of 100 beads, or I would rewrite it as in 29 out of 100, will have a defect. A bead produced by the machine will be selected at random. What is the probability of selecting a bead that has a defect? So if we know 29 of them are going to have a defect out of 100, we would set it up with 29 over 100, and you can see immediately that that is answer choice C. All right, number three. So in the figure, line M is parallel to line N. Makes sense. And it's because line T intersected both lines. What is the value of X? So X is over here, and we're given 33 degrees here. So we know with parallel lines that have been intersected by the same line, they're going to have the same degrees. So we know that if that is 33 degrees, we know this is going to be 33 degrees. And we know that both of these degrees over here is going to add up to 180 degrees. So we can find this value by taking 180 degrees, subtracting 33 degrees from it, and we end up with 147 degrees. So if we know this is 147 degrees, we can assume that X equals 147 degrees as well. And so answer choice D is going to be the correct solution. All right, number four. It's asking us what is the y-intercept of the graph shown? Okay, so for y-intercepts, when they say what is the y-intercept, we know it really means when x equals 0, what is y? So we can look, that's where x equals 0, and we just move the line up, and we know it's going to be 8. So we can immediately cross out A and B because x is not 0. We know it's not 6, so we can choose D as the correct answer. All right, number five. The total cost of FX in dollars to lease a car for 36 months from a particular car dealership is given. Okay, so this is our equation where X is the monthly payment in dollars. What is the total cost to lease a car when the monthly payment is $400? So what is f of x when x equals $400? So let's plug it into the equation. We have 36 times 400 plus 1,000. And we know 36 times 400 is going to be 14,400 plus 1,000. So that's going to be a total of 15,400, which is going to be answer choice C. All right, number six. So each side of a square has a length of 45. I would draw this out. So each side is 45. So what is the perimeter? So we're adding all of the sides together. So we're going to do 45 plus 45 plus 45 plus 45, or just 4 times 45. And that is going to get us 180, and that is going to be the correct answer. All right, number five. What is the positive solution to the given equation? All right, so we need to simplify. So what I immediately do is get x plus 6 over to the other side. So we're going to get 55 equals x times x plus 6. That's going to equal 55 equals x squared plus 6x. And I can see what it's trying to do. It wants us to get into that equation. So we're going to move this 55 over. We're going to end up with x squared plus 6x minus 55 equals 0. And so this is how we're going to find our positive solution. We're going to break this down. We're going to find multiples of 55. And initially we're going to get 11 and 5. 11 minus 5 equals positive 6. So we know this is going to be a positive 11 and a negative 5 because 11 times negative 5 would equal negative 55. So we know it's going to be x plus 11 times x minus 5 equals 0. And we're going to set both of these equal to 0, and we're going to come out with x equals negative 11 and x equals positive 5. And so x equals 5 will be our positive solution and thus the correct answer to number 7. All right, number 8. An object travels at a constant speed of 12 centimeters per second. So 12 centimeters per second, so s. At this speed, what is the time in seconds that it would take an object to travel 108 centimeters? Okay, so what we want to do is get the centimeters to cancel out. So we're going to take 108 centimeters over 1 times the amount of seconds over 12 centimeters because it's 12 centimeters a second. So we're going to cancel out the centimeters and we're going to end up with 108 seconds over 12. And then once dividing that, we're going to realize it's going to be 9 seconds. All right, number 9. So they give us two data sets, 1 and 2. So this gives us data sets x and y. Which statement correctly compares the mean of the data set y with the mean of data? Okay, so we need to find the mean of these data sets, and you do that by finding the sum of all the data sets divided by the amount of numbers in that data set. So if we go ahead and do that, we find that data set's mean, data set x's mean is 9, while the mean of data set y is 12.6. Okay, so that's the mean of data set y. And mean is another term for average if that makes it easier to remember. So let's look at the answer choices. The mean of dataset X is greater than the mean of dataset Y. That's not true because the mean of dataset X is 9 and 9 is not greater than 12.6. So the mean of dataset X is less than the mean of dataset Y. Yes, that is true. The mean of dataset X and dataset Y are equal. Nope. And there is enough information to compare the means, so B is the correct answer. All right, number 10. A rocket contained 467,000 kilograms of propellant before the launch. And in 21 seconds after the launch, it had 362,105 kilograms of propellant remained. On average, approximately how much propellant did the rocket burn each second after the launch? So the way I would set this up is I would take 467,000 and subtract 362,105 kilograms to see how much propellant was used during the flight. And if I do that, I get 104,895. And so you can immediately see that answer choice D is a trick question because it's looking for on average. So we're going to have to take this number and divide it by the amount of seconds that the flight was. And that's how we're going to find the average or per second rate that you burn propellant during the flight. And if we do that, we find that it is 400 or 4,995 per second. And so we're going to see that it is answer choice A. All right, number 11. If 4x plus 2 equals 12, then what is 16x plus 8? All right, well, the first thing I would do is solve for x. So I would take 4x plus 2 equals 12, subtract 2 from both sides, get 4x equals 10, then x equals 10 over 4, but that is 5 over 2. So we know that is x. So we're going to go ahead and plug that into this equation, and we're going to get 16 times 5 over 2 plus 8, We can immediately take that, make that an 8. 8 times 5 is 40 plus 8. So we're going to have 48 as our answer. So 11 is B. All right, number 12. An object is kicked from a platform. The equation is h equals negative 4.9 t squared plus 17 plus 9 represents in this situation where h is the height of the object above the ground in meters, t is seconds after it's kicked, which number represents the height in meters from which the object was kicked. Okay, so if it's the height where the object was kicked, that means it is at that height before it was kicked. So if t is seconds after kicked, then t equals 0 must be the moment before it was kicked because no time has elapsed after. So if I go into the equation and I plug in 0 for t, I quickly find out that h equals 0 plus 0 plus 9. So obviously h equals 9. Therefore, the answer is D. All right, number 13. The given equation defines the function f. For what value of x does fx reach its minimum? All right, so looking at this, this is a complete equation. So instead of doing very fancy math, I think you guys should absolutely 100% plug it into your calculator. If you do that, you should get a parabola that looks something like that. And so you know by looking at it that its minimum would be its vertex, and it's saying what value of x, what is the value of x at the vertex. So you would just find this point right there, the x value of that, and that would be your answer. But if you feel like doing it the hard way, then you can do it this way. You can use this equation, and it's x equals negative b over 2a. And so if you look at this equation, you know a equals 4, b equals negative 50, c equals 126. So if we take negative b, so negative 50, and put it over 2 times 4, we'll get 50 over 8, and that simplified equals 6.25. And this should be the same x value of that vertex. All right, 14. A small business owner budgets $2,200 to purchase candles. So budget equals $2,200. The owner must purchase a minimum of 200 candles. So purchase 200 candles, and it has to be greater than or equal to, and this one's probably less, it should be less than or equal to the budget. If the owner pays $4.9 per candle to purchase a small candle, so that means 4.9 is how much a small candle is, and 11.6 per candle to purchase a large candle, so 11.6 for large candles. What is the maximum number of large candles the owner can purchase to stay within budget and maintain the discounted pricing? So we have a few equations that come to mind. We have for the budget, I know that we have 4.9 for a small candle plus 11.6 for the large candle has to be less than or equal to the budget, so $2,200. And then we have another equation that I'll put over here where it's going to be the amount of candles. So you have small candles plus large candles have to be greater than or equal to enough candles to get that discounted pricing, which will be 200. So, and we're looking for the number, the maximum number of large candles. So let's move it over here. So let's set up our equation. So we know we have 4.9 S plus 11.6 L has to be less than or equal to 2200. And then we have S plus L has to be greater than or equal to 200. So what we need to do is get this all in L to find out exactly how many L's we need. So one thing to do would be replace this S with an L. So if we move this over, we know that S actually equals or is greater than or equal to 200 minus L. And we can go ahead and plug that into this equation. So what we get, and I'll bring it over down to the left, it'll be 4.9 times 200 minus L plus 11.6 L have to be less than or equal to 2200. And so what we get once we disperse this 4.9 is 980 minus 4.9 L plus 11.6 L is less than or equal to 2200. So we subtract 980 from both sides while combining these values. And if I move it over here, we should get something that looks like 6.7 L is less than or equal to 1,220. We divide that by 6.7. We should get L is less than or equal to 182.1. And so this, we're looking for the maximum value, which will be this. So this 182 will be our correct answer. All right, 15. In the linear function f, when f of x when x is 0, it equals 8. When x is 1, it equals 12, which defines f. All right, so the big hint here is when x equals 0, y equals 8. So the y-intercept is 8. So looking immediately, if I plugged 0 in that, it would equal 8, so that gets a check. This would not equal 8, it would equal 0. This would not equal 8, it would equal 12. And then D passes. All right, so when I plug in 1, which one equals 12? So when x is 1, y is 12. So if I plug in 1 here, you would get 12 times 1 plus 8, which would equal 20. So A is wrong. D is correct because if we plug in 1, it would equal 12. So D is the correct answer for 15. All right, number 16 looks to be a word problem, so I'm going to write out the information as I go. So the function f of w equals 6w squared, and this is a function to give us the area of a rectangle in square feet. So fw equals 6w squared, and this is the area in square feet, feet squared. If it's width, and w is the width, okay, and its length is 6 times the width. So L for 6 times the length equals the width. Which of the following is the best interpretation of F14 is 1176? Okay, so if we're taking the knowledge that we know above over here, and we set out the equation, F14 equals 1176, and we know that's going to be feet squared because they told us that in the beginning, we can see the parallels between the two equations. So writing the equation below it for reference, so if we know this is the width, then we can assume that 14 equals W. And if this equation finds us the area in feet squared, we can assume that 1176 is the area of that rectangle. So looking at our answer choices, if the width of the rectangle is 14 feet, then the area of the rectangle is 1176 feet squared. Checks out because that's what we wrote over here, that 14, it's the width, and 1176 is the area in feet squared. So B, if the width of the rectangle is 14 feet, then the length of the rectangle is 1176. That's not true. We do know that 6 times the length equals width, but either way, if you multiply 14 by 6 or divide it by 6, it's still nowhere close to 1,176, so B is wrong. If the width of the rectangle is 1,176 feet, then the length is 14 feet. No, because I'm plugging in 14 for where W goes, and W is the width, so that's not true. And the width of the rectangle is not 1,176, so C is out. D. If the width of the rectangle is 1,176 feet, then the area is 14 feet squared. Nope, that's definitely not true. So A is the only answer we have left. All right, number 17. The circle shown has a center O and a circumference of 144 pi. So we know the circumference equals 144 pi. And that's saying pretty much the circle all the way around equals 144. So let's read on. The diameters PR and QS. Okay, so PR, QS are the length of the circle's diameter. And we know the length of the arc PS is twice the length of the arc PQ. So P to S, so here to here is twice the length of here to here. What is the length of arc QR? So we're looking for this arc. Let's clean it up a little bit. So if we know that these are the diameters, then we can say, and this is the diameter, we can all say that they're equidistant. So this equals this, and this length equals this length. And they're asking us, what is the length of Q to R? Well, let's see. So if the whole thing all the way around equals 144, and they're asking us, then we can say it, and they're all the same. So if we know this is twice the length of PQ, then let's put it into variables. So let's say P to Q is X. So we know P to S is twice that, so it'd be 2X. But since these lines are the same length, we know that this arc equals this arc. So we know this side is actually 2x as well, and S to R is x. We know it all equals 144. So we know all these lengths added up equal 144. So let's draw it down here. So we get 2x plus 2x plus x plus x equals 144 pi, because these are all the lengths of our arc added up. So if we add these up, we get 2, 4, 5, 6. We get 6 equals 144x. And if we do 144 divided, or 6x, this is pi, this is pi. So no, 6x equals 144 pi. So therefore x, if we divide 6 from both sides, equals 24 pi. So looking at this, we know Q to R is equal to 2x. So let's take x and put it into that equation. 2 times 24 pi. Therefore, we know QR equals 48 pi, and that's how you get answer choice B. All right, number 18. A company that provides whale watching tours takes 21 people at a time, so the amount of people equals 21. The company's revenue is $80 per adult, so we have $80 per A for adults, and $60 per child, so we're going to have 60 for a child. If the company's revenue for one group consisting of adults and children was $1,440, so we know revenue equals $1,440, how many people in the group were children? All right. Well, there's two equations that I see here. So we have the amount of adults and the amount of children equal 21, because that's the amount of people in the group. And there's another equation where you have $80 per adult plus $60 per child equals the total of 1,440, because that's the revenue brought in. And so they're asking, what is C? Because C solves how many people in the group were children. So we need to get these equations in terms of C. And the first step to do that is to take this one and get it into terms of C by making A equals 21 minus C, because we just moved that c over to the opposite end. And we can use this and plug it into this equation. So we get 80 times 21 minus c plus 60c equals 1,440. All right. If we do that, we can distribute this 80 and we get 1,680, which is 80 times 21, minus 80c plus 60c equals 1,440. We break that down, and it's basically minus 20c equals 1,440. We're going to subtract 1680 from both sides. We're going to get negative 20c equals 240, negative 240. And so if we divide this by negative 20, divide this by negative 20, we get c is a positive 12. And so the answer choice is C. All right, number 19. The function h is defined by hx equals 4x plus 28. The graph of y equals hx on the xy plane has an x-intercept of a 0 and a y-intercept of 0b, where a and b are constants, but is the value of a plus b. So what it's asking us is saying when y equals 0, x equals a, and a equals what? And then when x equals 0, y equals b, and b equals what? And so we have this equation 4x plus 28. So what I would do is just take the x and the y and plug it into that equation. So let's start with the first one. When y is 0, what is x? So subtract 28 from both sides and divide by 4 to isolate x. And we get negative 7 equals x. And then that means a equals negative 7. So we have that one. Let's move on. When x equals 0, what is y? So let's take 4x plus 28, plug in 0. 4 times 0 is 0, plus 28. And this is set equal to y. Then 28 equals y. And that means b equals 28. And so let's add these together. What is 28 plus negative 7? That's 28 subtracting 7. 21 is going to be our answer, and that is answer choice A. All right, number 20. One of the factors of 2x cubed plus 42x squared is 208x is x plus b, where b is a positive constant. What is the smallest possible value of b? Sweet. So looking at this, I know we're going to have to simplify it. And immediately I see that they're all even numbers divisible by 2, and they all have x as a variable multiplied by it. So immediately I'm going to take out 2x, and I'm going to get x cubed or x squared plus 21x plus 104. I'm going to break that down further. I can do that by seeing that these are positives. I'm going to take multiples of 104 that can add up to 21, and they're both going to be positive because both of these are positive signs. I know it's 8 and 13 because added together they equal 21, multiplied together they equal 104. So I can get 2x plus x plus 8 and x plus 13. And if you want to, you can FOIL this to make sure it's correct. And so if x plus b and this is b, then I know 13 and 8 are choices for b, but they want the smallest value. So I know b equals 8. So 8 is the correct answer. All right, number 21. They give us y, and they give us an equation, y equals x squared plus 8x plus a. In the given system of equations, a is a positive constant. And the system has exactly one distinct real solution. What is the value of a? So when I always see one distinct real solution, they mean they want us to use the discriminant function, and it's going to be b squared minus 4ac. And there's different ways to look at it. If it's greater than 0, this means that there are two real solutions. If b squared minus 4ac is equal to 0, that means there's one real solution. And if b squared minus 4ac is less than 0, that means there are two imaginary solutions. And so since it's asking for one real solution, we know we're going to set it equal to 0. And so how we're going to do this is put this into an equation. So immediately I want to do this. I want to do negative 1.5 equals x squared plus 8x plus a, but I need to simplify it, and that means setting it to 0. So I'm going to move this 1.5 over here. And so we're going to get x squared plus 8x plus a plus 1.5 equals 0. And we're going to need, in order to get b squared minus 4ac, we're going to need our a, we're going to need our b, we're going to need our c. So our a is this, the 1 in front of x squared, our b is 8, and our c is actually going to be a and 1.5 added together, because normally that would be one number, but since we don't know a, that's our c. Sweet. So let's plug this into the equation. So we know it's b squared minus 4ac equals 0. We're going to get b squared, which is going to be 8 squared minus 4 times a times c, all equal to 0. So immediately 8 squared is 64 minus 4a whole, and that's going to be 4a minus 6 equals 0. Okay, and so we can take this 6 and this 64 and subtract them, so we get 58 minus 4a equals 0. Move this 58 over, then we get negative 4a equals negative 58 divided by negative 4 divided by negative 4. And then we get a, and I think that's going to be a decimal. It's 14.5. And so that's going to be our positive constant, our a. All right, number 22. The function is given, which table of values represents f of x minus 3. So if this is f of x, we're basically subtracting 3 at the end of it. So they give us all the x values. And so I'm guessing the way to do this is you plug in each x value, and you can actually, honestly, since all of these have different answers except for these two, you can probably plug in negative 6 and just immediately cross out two answers. So let's do that. If I pull this down here and I do negative 6 plus 6, well, that's just going to be 0 multiplied by, all the other parentheses. But since it's multiplied, it's just going to be 0 minus 3. And so immediately we know A's out, B's good, C's good, and D's out. And the reason I say this is because if it's 0, then multiplied by these two numbers, it's still going to be 0. And so that's the logic I'm using. And so if we go to negative 5, well, once again, we know it's going to be 0. So it's all going to be 0. So if every single one's going to be just 0 minus 3, then we know negative 3 for all values is the correct answer. So it is B. All right, number 23. For the function q, the value of qx decreases, so it's decreasing, by 45% every increase of x by 1. So every time x increases, the value decreases by 45%. And basically if x equals 0, q equals 14, which one defines q? So immediately I'm just going to put 0 for x and see what bites. So if you put any number to the power of 0, it equals 1. So all of these values now equal 1 because x is 0. So this has to be 14 because 14 times 1 would be 14. So therefore, if x is 0, then q would equal 14. We know that it's not this and it's not this. So we're left with B, or with C and D. So now I have to see when x increases, what decreases. And what I notice immediately is that this is less than 0 and this is above 1 or above 0. So when you're dealing with percentages, and so if I have a percentage 45 and I want it to decrease or increase something, you have to add it or subtract it from 1. So if it's decreasing, then I know it's a negative 0.45. So if I do 1 minus 0.45, I get 0.55. So therefore, C is the correct answer. And if you just plug this into your calculator and you just wanted to put 2 for x, then 3 for x, and to see what increased and what decreased for both of these to see which answer increased or decreased the value, you could do that, or to see by how much, and you would find that C is the correct answer. All right, number 24. There's a graph, and they just tell us that it is y equals fx plus 14 is shown, which equation defines function of f. Okay, so basically what it's saying is f translated up 14 is actually this line right here. So these lines are going to have the same slope, same m. It's just going to be moved down 14 because this is just being translated up on the y-axis by 14. So let's look at the y-intercept. So we know that when x is 0, it's going to be 2. So for this equation, it's going to be 2 minus 14, and it's going to be negative 12, should be the y-intercept. And we know that because here the y-intercept is 2, translated down 14 units, or, yep, it would be down here at the negative 12. So immediately I can just rule out all of them, and I know the answer is going to be A. All right, number 25. The side lengths of a right triangle RST are given. So first thing I'm going to do is just draw it, because that every time they give you something, it's just where you can draw it, it is just better to do so you can better understand it. RST are given. Triangle RST is similar to triangle UVW, where S corresponds with V and T corresponds to W. What is the value of the tan of W? So let's just draw it out. I can tell that the largest side is 52, so I'm going to put that here for the hypotenuse, 48 and 20. And I know it's going to look like that, or that is the right triangle. So we know that this triangle is similar to UVW. UVW is here. And we know that S corresponds with V. So let's just do R, or this is S to R, S to T, and then T to R will be that. So that makes sense. And then we're going to do S corresponds with V, so this will be V. And then T corresponds to W, so T is over here, so this is where W should be, and then this is where U should be. This is still a right triangle. What is the value of the tan of W? So we know this is 52. We can just assume the lengths are the same. And we're going to use so, ka, to, So this means the sin is opposite over hypotenuse. Cos is adjacent. Hypotenuse over hypotenuse, and tan is the opposite over adjacent. So from W, the opposite would be 20. Adjacent would be 48. This is the hypotenuse, but in TOA, it doesn't really matter. So it's just going to be the tan over opposite over its adjacent. And so that's going to be 20 over 48. Simplified, this divided by 2, we get 10 over 24. Divided by 2 again, we're going to get 5 over 12. So our answer is going to be B. Okay, so 1 gallon of paint will cover 220 square feet of a surface. So we know gallons equal 220 square feet. The room has a total wall area of W square feet, so the area is W feet squared. Which equation represents the total amount of paint in gallons needed to paint the wall of the room twice? Okay, so we want P, but P is in gallons, so we are looking for G. We know that 220 feet squared equals 1 gallon, and we know we want to do the area, which is W, but we want to do it twice, so let's throw a 2 there. All right. So what I see is that we need to convert feet squared into gallons. And well, we know 1 gallon equals 220 feet squared. We know we have 2 W feet squared. Okay, so we need the feet squared to cancel out. So immediately I see that we want 2W feet squared times, we want feet squared on the bottom. So this is going to be 220. This is just going to be the 1 gallon, so we can have the gallon on top. And we're going to get the feet squared to cancel out. So we're going to end up with 2W over 220. And then we can cancel out these 2's and we'll move it over here. We're going to get W over 110, and that's in gallons. And so we're going to get answer choice A. All right, number 27. The number A is 110% greater than number B, and the number B is 90% less than 47. What is the value of A? So always when you're dealing with percentages, do you want to add them or subtract them to 1? So if it's increasing a value, you add it. If it's decreasing a value, you subtract it. And so we can take 1 plus 110%, because if you move this decimal over, that actually means it's 1.1, and that would equal 2.1. And using this information, we know A equals 2.1 times B, because that is 110% of B. And using the same logic, we can take 1, and since B is 90% less than 47, we subtract 90%. And if you move the decimal over, that's actually just 0.9. So we get 0.1. So now we know B equals 47 times 0.1. And using this logic, we can do 0.1 times 4.7 or 47 and move the decimal over. So B equals 4.7. And so knowing B equals 4.7, we can plug it into this equation where it's A equals 2.1 times B. So A equals 2.1 times 4.7. So now we know A equals 9.87, and that is the correct answer.